View from the Gutters, Episode 10. Welcome to View from the Gutters, the comic book podcast where each episode we discuss a collected edition, trade paperback, or graphic novel, and then recommend and vote on the book for the next episode. Warning: the discussion portion of this show has massive spoilers for that book. On this episode, we discuss Wormwood Gentleman Corpse Volume 1, and, to skip ahead to the recommendations, skip to 2958. Hello, welcome to episode 10 of Oprah Winfrey's Comic Book of the Fortnight/Month Club. That's actually the name for our new members. Got two new people tonight. I'm Andrew Chard, as usual.
I'm Joe Preti.
Cade Reynolds.
Cade Reynolds.
I'm Tobiah Panshin.
Tobiah's back.
And Brant Eddy.
Yeah.
So we got a fivesome going this week.
This may be the most we've ever had.
Oh, it is.
We might, it's definitely tied, if not the most.
Oh, yeah,
We might have had 5 before. I can't remember. Like
Yeah,
in the early days.
I remember exactly a week back.
Yeah.
It's old hat to you now. You've had 5 people, now you can't tell. You just can't remember.
I know.
I've done 5 people. I don't remember 5 people.
Exactly.
Well, it's a far cry from 3.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
2 weeks ago.
Those were dark days.
Yeah.
It was.
Thankfully, we don't have too many 3-person episodes. Just 1 or 2 scattered throughout there. But that's all right.
Which is good. Which is good.
What did we do this week? Oh, yeah.
We did Wormwood, Gentleman Corpse. Volume 1 of
one.
Wormwood, Gentleman Corpse by Ben Templesmith. And Ben Templesmith. With Ben Templesmith on keys.
Yeah, he does everything, I think, in this book.
Yoink.
Yoink. It's taken away from me.
Created, written, and drawn by Ben Templesmith.
Yeah.
Letters by Jason Hanley, Tom B. Long, and Robbie Williams.
And the lettering is really good in this book. So
The lettering is really good.
hats off to those guys.
The lettering is very important.
It doesn't detract from Templesmith's art at all. It helps add to the atmospheric quality, so I like it a lot. It's good.
Yeah.
Let's just go around the table and give our initial thoughts. I picked it. I liked it. Go.
This is the second time I've read through the first volume, and I love it. I think it's fun. It's interesting. It builds on ideas that I think are already kind of part of our comic book consciousness, but it does it in a really interesting way.
Yeah.
And Wormwood is a badass.
Yeah, you and I both read this before. What did you think about it on the second reading? Because I thought it was a little bit different reading it the second time.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was able to kind of, you notice things. You notice how, the thing I really like about it is how everything meshes.
Yeah.
Nothing is fighting for supremacy here, right? You don't like everything, and it's the nice about a single creator. It's the nice thing about a single creator book is that it's his vision, right? So you're getting it the way he wants you to see it.
Yeah, but that's not necessarily a good thing.
Not always. No.
Yeah,
That can be a very bad thing when your single creator is, say, Frank Miller
Or
Rob Liefeld.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
Some moments popped out in here that I was like, I don't remember that being as awkward before. Like the vulgarity, which I love about comics, just like I love about this book, is great. And especially on the first time reading it, you're like, yeah, this is lighthearted and fun, and he's not afraid to make a cock joke. But the second time through, like, reading it all in one trade for the second time, I was like, really? Again? More stripper jokes? Come on. And I think that's where the first volume suffers, and the next 2 get better.
Right.
They get to expand the universe more, and they're less, cock and tit jokes, which are fine and I enjoy, and every book needs those. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, that's a cornerstone of entertainment is cock and tit jokes.
yeah. Cade, what do you think?
At first, I didn't like it. The first couple of issues were kind of, just really out there.
Mm-hmm.
However, when issue 3 opened up with the morgue shot, it was right out of CSI, and it just kind of pulled me in. And by issue 4, I loved it. So.
Yeah, and this is a series I think keeps getting better too.
Wow.
So
Wow, I feel really awkward now. I liked it. I didn't love it.
Yeah.
I actually had a lot of problems with it. I thought the color palettes were really great.
Yeah.
I thought the way that he drew it was really good, but it also felt incredibly derivative to me, particularly of say Hellboy.
yeah,
And it just it kind of approached the level of being really good, but it never quite like it never had that crowning moment of awesome where I just went, oh my god, this is so great. Like it was always good. It just never managed to get over that threshold.
Reading it the second time, I kind of felt like that too. I was like, I read it and I picked it and I was like, I don't know if anyone's gonna go for this because it's like, I really like it, but at the same time, there's like so many flaws and just like faults and blemishes in there that I like noticed the second time. But I think overlooking that, like, it's an interesting idea.
I also think that the trade suffers a little bit by throwing issue 0 in there because I think issue 0 actually detracts from issue 1.
Yeah, I agree with that. It
ruins the setup a little bit.
Yeah,
it does.
Because you get kind of like this flushed out story in one issue, and then issue 1 you have to like kind of reapproach it from a new part, but you don't get any climax in issue 1 really because you have to kind of wait.
I wonder.
I was gonna say, what do you think, Brant? But why don't you just interrupt me by telling me what you think?
I will. But I want to finish this thought before I lose it. I wonder if it would have made more sense to put issue 0 in order of when it was released relative to the other issues. Like, yeah, it's a flashback and it's an issue 0, but just because it's sequentially number 0 doesn't mean that it's best read as the first thing. So I wonder if they would have done 1 through 4 then number 0.
Yeah, I don't even know when number 0. I don't know if it was like a promo issue or if it was released after the fact.
Actually, now
I
that I'm
have
saying
no
that,
idea.
It occurs to me that I think actually at the end of issue 0 it says.
Oh, it does. It was the first
thing. It doesn't say in the trade, but actually, if you look at I have the issues. If you look at the end of the issues, it says "Look forward to the
miniseries." It's like a preview issue. Which
I guess
it works. I think it works really well as like a teaser.
Yeah,
it does.
But then
I think if I read this and somebody said to me, "In 6 months, you can read this as an ongoing series," I go, "Okay, great, I want to read that."
Yeah,
right. Just piggybacking it.
But since I have that series right there in front of me, I don't need the teaser kind of setting things up.
Oh, I think sticking it in the end would have been good. I think they.
I agree.
They did that with the Transmet collection. There's a 0 issue that you can, and I read it after everything, but it's a connection of Spider Jerusalem's columns, and it works much better at the end.
Well, don't they stick that in like volume 7 or 8 or something?
I think the new volume 1 trade actually has it incorporated into it, which I think is a mistake because you need to read it after you have this idea of who Spider Jerusalem is as a character, because then it's so much
it has
more
power behind it.
Yeah, exactly.
You need the build-up of issues 1 through 4 to really understand it.
Yeah, so I agree with you. The 0 kind of detracts a little bit.
Yeah, otherwise, for me, I don't know. Yes, it's derivative, but a lot of comics is derivative, and sometimes that's the most fun is, listening to a cover song, right?
Yeah.
Temple Smith's version of Hellboy with Titsukava jokes.
Don't get me wrong, there are elements of it that I really, really like.
I have a hard time with Temple Smith's art. This is especially true for me with his other work, like 30 Days of Night. I get kind of discombobulated by his choices once I read a lot of it, though. And it's funny, what I ended up doing actually for tonight was I read actually the first 12 issues, or all of 12 issues of what is out right now from Wormwood. And then I went back and reread the first 4, just kind of like refresh my memory to make sure that I was actually talking about the right thing tonight. And it's funny, I didn't like the story beats as much the second time through. I was kind of like, whatever. But the art actually gripped me in a little bit better of a way.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, what I notice about Temple Smith stuff is that his consistency is challenged depending on the angle of his characters. Like he'll have some of these shots of his characters that are immaculate looking, forward looking or in a pose. But then when there's broken up in this 9 panels and they're going through actions, some of them don't look proportionally right to each other, which in some of his work makes sense. Like in 30 Days of Night, it kind of plays well because it's like it's dark and you can't see things clearly. I'm making quotation marks in the air like anybody who's listening can hear me, but or see me. But with this, when it's like brightly lit hell fight, it's kind of like, why is Wormwood's face distinctly differently shaped in this panel?
Yeah, and in 30 Days of Night, that book is so much more abstract. Like you're not. You really can't see anything, and like that plays into the horror element of it. But it also makes that book, I think, really difficult to read.
Yeah, it really
I think
does.
that really It's the only time I think Temple Smith's art like really hurts the story that I've read is in 30 Days of Night, which is what he's most famous for. So I think that's funny. Or like in this and in Fell, I feel like he's so much better about how he frames things.
Well, his composition is really good, and his character design is really, really good. I think that's actually my favorite thing about the entire comic is the character design.
Yeah, I love the robot.
Mr. Pendulum.
Yeah, I think he's amazing character.
That's what sells me on this. Is it's not just I love Temple Smith's art, but what I love even more than that is that I feel that he has this understanding of how important panel placement and panel usage is to the telling of the story. There are panel usages in there that I really think, for me, like help convey elements of the story or what's going on. And I think one of my favorite things about Fell is that it's done mostly in that 9-up, 9 panels on a page style, which makes it really you have to know what you're doing to tell a story that way. You can't. Each one of those panels has to convey exactly the amount of information you need it to. And I think he does it, I think in Fell he does it better than in Wormwood. And still, I like a lot of the panel setup in Wormwood. And I love the art. I mean, I agree with Brant that sometimes there are some inconsistencies, but I feel like that's charming almost.
I actually didn't like the art at first, but like Brant said, it kind of grows on you.
It's something that you have to click with, and that's actually one of the reasons why I relate it to Hellboy. Because I could not read Hellboy for the longest time because I couldn't get my head around Mike Mignolia's art.
Right.
And what it actually took was me reading his older work, which was an adaptation of Fafford and the Grey Mouser.
Which is awesome.
Which is not as stylized as Hellboy, even though it's still in his style. And I was kind of able to get my head around that and use that to get my head around Hellboy. And then I really loved Hellboy.
Cosmic Odyssey is kind of the same way, where it's like the very early iteration of his style, and you can kind of like get used to the big heavy shadows and blocking that he does.
And so in that context, I could totally see Wormwood being an acquired taste. But tell me if I'm wrong here. He was just the artist on 30 Days of Night.
Yeah.
And
Steve Niles wrote it, yeah.
And then
is this the first thing that Temple Smith has written?
That was his first writing.
Okay, because it definitely feels like a freshman effort to me.
It does.
And I could totally see him taking those ideas and refining them in another work later on and being a lot better.
Well, yeah, the subsequent issues of this are really good. And then, is it called Choker? Yeah. Is that his newer one? That one's really good.
I'm not sure.
Welcome to Oxford. I don't know any of the names of these. I apologize. But I think those are the 2 newer ones that he's done, and those are both like really interesting and really good. But what brings me back to Wormwood is the lightheartedness. Volume 2 is actually my favorite volume, where they travel to the land of leprechauns, I believe.
And I read some of that arc as well. And I actually like that one better.
Yeah, I think he gets better.
I actually like that one the least. I like volumes 1 and 3 more than I like 2. But I realize that I have a bias. This is going to sound strange. It drives me crazy with some people's art. I was thinking about it earlier today because I was reading Action Comics illustrated by Rags Morales. And I have this problem with Frank Quietly too. Pouchy people or things that have these really round, kind of flatulent look.
Yeah.
Really just bother me aesthetically. And so when like the leprechauns show up, it's like all these little fat, rotund.
They're just like all baggy.
Yeah, and I mean, on one hand, I'm repulsed by them, and I'm sure that's the intention.
Right.
Like, they're not things to like. I mean, that's part of the whole story. But on the other hand, it's like, I don't want to spend my entire time looking at this. I just have no interest. And so,
well, I think that's actually what I liked about it was the dichotomy between, hey, this is kind of funny, and I'm having fun, and oh my god, this thing is hideous.
Yeah.
And I don't like looking at it.
I liked all the like kind of almost Xenos like from Alien looking like Cthulhu-esque monsters, that are running around bursting out of people. Like I liked the design on those a lot. I like the design on the like big bad guy that's making them all. When you finally see him without the cape on or whatever, and he looks like he's full of tentacles and eyes. Like he's just only tentacles and eyes basically. And I think he looks great. I like the design. I was less impressed by the design of the demon later. I feel like he like blew it by showing me all the cool things first, and then the demon looks like totally traditional, but like hell demon.
I love how, and this might just be me. I personally love that the way the whole thing resolves itself.
Yeah,
and you totally think it's going to be this one thing, and it's totally not.
Yeah,
it's totally not what you think it's going to be.
We get totally spoiled because people are playing along. So like when he just essentially just talks them out of
I know your brother. That's cool.
What's with your bro? And then he saves the world just by knowing somebody.
Honestly, I think that was probably the part that stopped me from liking this more than I otherwise could have. I don't like it when people take alien things, whether that alien thing is an elf or a dwarf or an extra dimensional demon or an actual alien, and make them just a human in a funny costume.
I love that.
That
bothers me. I want my aliens to be just incomprehensibly alien.
I just want them to be...
I want them to be weird and inscrutable and do things for reasons that you don't understand, especially when they're things like demons.
Yeah.
Where they have agendas that you don't understand.
I like the dickishness of demons, though. I like them to have a little bit of humanity to them.
Well, that's,
they're just like, they're a little bit wacky.
Well, there's dickishness and there's banal dickishness.
Yeah.
What I liked, though, is that throughout the book, they kind of hint that Wormwood is a different being in general, and so then him knowing the demon, it like makes you just go, what the heck?
Yeah, it does draw more attention to the fact that Wormwood's like extra dimensional.
Yeah, he's not just a zombie. He's not just some crazy worm riding around in a zombie. That he's.
And I think there's definitely an implication that he's not necessarily a good person.
Yeah, I mean, he's not there to like help save the universe. He's there because he likes the world, because he likes to drink there. You know, it's like, you try to burn my bar down, I'll punch you in the face. It's like that element to it. He's not trying to save the world because he likes humans.
He's one part Sam Spade, one part John Constantine, and one part somebody else who I had earlier and was brilliant, and I can't remember.
I think there's a little bit of Mr. Mind in there.
Yeah. I mean, he's aware of what he doesn't get flustered. He's just like, these fucking people. I gotta go and deal with this shit now.
Yeah.
I just want to drink. Like, my favorite thing about issue 0 is, it's not like, oh, you're here and you're killing people. It's like, you fucked with my beer, all right? Yeah. That's not cool. That is not okay in any way, shape, or form.
Priorities, man.
Yeah. And they're priorities I can relate to because, like, beer.
Yeah, of course. It's good.
Beer.
What's important.
His most recent book, Ben Templesmith's most recent book, is Welcome to Hawksford.
Yeah, nailed it.
Yes, excellent. And this was his first thing. He had worked with Steve Niles on several things. This was his first big thing. He did Singularity 7, which I've read, and it's interesting. But
I forgot about that one.
And Fell,
that
which
was
is
his first thing, wasn't it? Singularity.
No, it came out after Wormwood. I thought it was before
Fell,
too, but
I think that's the only.
I think it came out after, but I could
read.
have sworn I read a note somewhere that said he actually wrote Singularity 7 first.
He might have. It's actually the same year when they first came out, 2004. So Singularity 7, which is interesting, and
that one's a lot rougher around.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a way bigger idea.
Yeah,
than Wormwood.
Totally.
Like Wormwood is such a it's a good idea. It's a derivative idea, but it's just like, it's something easier to handle. Yeah, it's like
there's not any like huge overarching plot.
Yeah, not creating a whole new world.
Yeah,
his universe that he creates, quote unquote universe, is very like not fleshed out. Like you have no idea what the interdimension is
going. Yeah, right. So Welcome to Hawksford in 2008, and then Choker, which is his most recent, and he's the co-creator with Ben McCool, and that's Image is putting that out now.
That one's pretty good.
So, and Fell, which is something that if you don't have, you should run out and buy right now and read it, and then read it again, because...
Yeah, no one's ever picked it on the podcast, but we've talked about it like a ton of times.
Am I wrong? Or they never even finished Fell, did they?
No, it's what I'd like to call a Warren Ellis special. Here's this really great glimpse into this amazing world filled with really well fleshed out characters. You want more? Well, I'm doing 8 other things right now, so you'll have to wait until 2050 when I'm dead. And somebody redoes the property and it's awful.
And then you get Brian K. Anderson's
Yeah, right.
And nobody wants that.
No.
Nobody.
Warren, Warren Ellis suffers from diarrhea of the brain.
Nobody could. Nobody
that we want here talking about these things wants that.
bad people in that other place want that.
Yeah.
I think Warren Ellis would admit that he has diarrhea of the brain.
I'm sure he would.
Madness that fuels the little locomotive that is Warren Ellis.
Yeah, right. And I appreciate it, but when it comes to things like Desolation Jones, which you've talked about on the podcast, and Fell, and there's some really Ocean. I think Ocean had some really interesting ideas.
Well, he did finish that story.
Yeah, but I mean, there's...
You want to explore more, but I think one of the problems is a market issue. Right?
Yeah.
I mean...
Funding.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe this will change with the Tate interwebs and Kickstarter and all that stuff, and some of the projects that are getting some like Gail Simone and a couple of those other folks, and Mark Waid's moving to digital comics. Like, maybe there will be more room for creators to be able to feel like they can invest themselves. But I think Warren Ellis has been pretty open about the fact that, I mean, he has to keep coming back and doing things for Marvel and all of them because he has to pay the bills. And as much as people may be like, oh my God, Warren Ellis, I want to sleep with you. I love your ideas so much. That doesn't put a roof over his head, put his kid through college or anything else. And that's, I think, a challenge for going back to those really complicated things.
No, but I think at the end of the day, that's a good thing. Because I would hate to live in the world where Warren Ellis could just do a Kickstarter and be totally free from any, like, ideas of moderation or, like, this needs to find a wide audience. Yeah. And he could just write whatever he wants.
Well,
because that would be a scary, scary thing to read.
I mean, isn't that happening? And it's called Avatar. I mean, that's pretty much what the whole Avatar line of comics is he's like, I'm going to tell this.
For Garth Ennis. Well, I mean, for both of them.
He still gets cut off on there, though, because wasn't that where Dr. Sleepless was?
Yeah. Or Science Jerusalem, as I like to call him.
So there's, like, lots of shit, even at Avatar, that he doesn't finish.
At the end of the day, he's still beholden to what's going to sell in a comic book shop.
Absolutely.
And if he starts setting up Kickstarters where people just give him a pile of money to do whatever the hell he wants, that is, I mean, it will be the end of the world.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think it'd actually be the end of the world if
Grant... 1,000 demons will pour into this world.
I think that's Grant Morrison you're talking about. Grant Morrison writes the Grand Necronomicon. Yeah. Alan Moore writes the Grand Necronomicon. The Grantonomicon. Alan Moore summons forth Cthulhu from the depths, and you find out that they're actually the same person. They're just different personalities, each given a body. Alan Moore. Greg Proops was talking about Alan Moore like 6 or 8 months ago.
Nice.
Because that's how far behind I am on the Proopcast. There's a plug for another podcast.
That totally does not need our plug.
It doesn't totally know, so I'm not going to give you the name of it. You'll just have to figure it out.
I already did.
The Proopcast. It's not called the Proopcast though. You could do that, but it's got a name, which I will not say. That name I will not say.
Any other thoughts on the book at all?
I think it's... Go ahead.
Somebody said freshman effort earlier. I'm not sure.
That was me.
It's funny. I mean, the series doesn't drop that challenge. Going into volumes 2 and 3, and even in this volume 1, like, I agree with Joe that there are times where the panel layout's really dynamic, the art is really interesting, there's this sense of motion, and then there are times where I feel like I'm hitting a brick wall of text. Or kind of like that whole, our conversation's going to go longer than it needs to because I haven't properly formatted my action to complete, like there are some jokes, there are a few jokes, and I wish I could think of one in particular. There's one that's kind of like floating at the margins of my brain where it's like, it would have been way funnier if he would have cut like a panel and half a balloon of text out, but he had gotten himself to a certain point by that stage. Yeah. And that happens a couple of times. It's not, I mean, let's face it, most of us are going to do way worse than that. I'm not saying like, oh my God, don't buy this book or read it because he messes up a panel occasionally. It's just like, I think... Maybe for me, one of the challenges is if I'm already kind of hyper aware of the book in a way that this book made me aware of it, because I'm like, oh wow, this really tastes like these other influences. I think in some ways those missteps or those choices impact me harder than, like, if I was kind of blown away by the premise because it was all new to me. I think, at least for me personally, I just forgive a lot of that stuff as I'm reading through it the first or 2 times because my brain doesn't catch it. But when it's something like this where I'm like, all right, there's your Hellboy, there's your kind of this or that. Oh, weird. The pacing stumbled here in this weird way. And it seems like I'm more aware of it in a weird way.
Yeah, I mean, because it is slightly familiar, you know. One thing about the panel layouts, I'm not sure that he does in this one. He often doesn't like reveal how he does his art because he has such a distinct style, so he doesn't, you know, give it away very often. But he doesn't sell a lot of original art of the panels, obviously, because they look nothing like this, you know, when he originally draws them. So part of me wonders if each panel is its own, you know, separate thing, and then he scans them and assembles them later.
The way that it looks, I mean, it's got this very layered, very textured look to it, and I would not be surprised at all if he draws each panel individually, like, let's say in Photoshop.
Right.
Yeah.
And puts a texture on them or whatever, and then composites them together later.
Well, yeah, what he does is and he actually talks about it in the back here, is he scans in an image, and then he just basically plays with filters and layers until he gets it to where he wants it to.
Which is a really great effect.
Yeah, but I don't know if he draws each panel individually and then assembles them in the computer, because that could also account for the like weird chunks
rather
of,
than
like
he's like
draws a whole page at a time, you know. So like that could hurt him when he's like, oh man, now I got to add a panel in there because this page is done and this, you know. So like that could all account for it too. I don't know that I'm just guessing, you know, because his drawings are so intricate and require so much like filtering and stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if each panel is like maybe done.
But I also wouldn't be surprised if that goes away in future works by him, if he figures out a way around or whatever.
Yeah.
It just evolves as an artist.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this was originally published
2004.
8 years ago?
Yeah.
So 2004 to 2006, and then it says 2006 ongoing.
Yeah, they rebooted some tale. I think it's Wormwood Tales or something, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm not totally sure.
I think it's I like it because it gives this distinct look, but yeah.
I do like, there's little like humorous touches in there too that are a lot more subtle, because there's lots of like, yeah, I'm gonna hit you over the head with a giant dick joke, you know. It's like great. There's lots of like little subtlety jokes in there. Like Joe was just flipping through the pages and I glanced over and caught one of my favorite ones I forgot about, and it's the bullet sound effects. There's just like blam 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 blam, and then it says etc.
Yeah.
You know, like he just like was like, yeah, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
You get it, you know, like.
Issue 0, I think, has one panel of Wormwood pulling out a cell phone, and then in brackets it actually has kind of like very subtly, like almost like scrawled in the background, extra planar cell phone, easy.
Yeah, no, it's Medusa that pulls out the cell phone.
Medusa, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's little things like that. And actually, those are the things that made me kind of like, you know, who reminds me of kind of is, for whatever reason, I don't know if there's a straight analogy, but Doug Tenapple. Guy get earthworm jig.
Oh yeah, yes. Oh.
That kind of quirky, like you know, if it was a movie, it'd be like stop frame, cartoony thing, like look, it's a gun, you know.
Yeah.
And
Isn't there one point where the sound effect is literally like sound of whatever the thing is? Like it's like sound of gun cocking.
There's one of those, and then I don't know if it's in the first volume. I think it's actually in volume 3. There's like a cataclysmic explosion, and literally it's this giant panel with all this stuff, and then on the bottom in really bold typeface it says insert loud noise of preference here.
I think that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I like that kind of stuff. And it's also like I often forget to read sound effects the first time through.
Yeah.
But when a book has like awesome sound effects in them, then I take note. Especially the second time I read it, it like catches me and I'm like, oh, these are crazy.
Yeah.
There's some.
One thing I wanted to note, just because I found it incredibly awesome, was in one of the single issues, I believe it was actually 6, 7, or 8, at the end, he actually put in a comic book that he wrote in high school that didn't have very much writing. It was just art of a dead guy sitting in a computer chair eating snails. And it was only 2 pages, but it was just really cool.
Nice.
Nice, yeah. I like it when they put like little extras in the single issues that you don't then later get in the trade.
Yeah.
To kind of like coerce you into buying the second.
They'll put them in, or they'll like have a trade that's all the little odds and ends.
Yeah, I like it when they kind of make you want to go buy the single issues. It's fun.
Absolutely.
Issue 5
has the
little mini comic.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's neat.
with the guy who kind of looks like Wormwood. Actually, the body that Wormwood's in, not Wormwood himself.
Well, and I love how one of the things I love is that sometimes it's the corpse is talking, but then sometimes it's very obvious that it's Wormwood himself talking.
Yeah, the bubble comes
and the bubble comes out of his eye, and you're like, it's a little bit unnerving at first, but then it starts to be like hilarious because it's like he has this telepathic link with the body, with his host body, but sometimes it's just he doesn't have time for that shit. You know, sometimes he just got to be a smartass right now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we picked over that corpse pretty well. So
Nice.
We want to talk about our nominations for next episode.
Yeah. All right. I'll go first, I guess. So the book I picked this month is I grabbed the omnibus because they didn't have the first issue of the shop, but we can read first 6 issues. Maybe first 12 would be better because the story's a little dense. But not in a way that is difficult to read, but in a way that like it takes a little while to develop. It's up to you guys. I mean, the omnibus has 18. So
why don't you tell us what it is?
Okay, it's called Rex Mundi. This is the omnibus volume 1. There's like 6 volumes, I think, of the trade out so far. It's really good. It's been coming out for a while.
Can I see that real quick?
Yeah.
Because I think I have the first couple of trades of this, actually.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. It's set in 1933. It's an alternate history of Europe and America. In the Civil War, the country actually divides. So there's a federal states of America and a Confederate America. There's the Holy Roman Empire, quote unquote, seems to have pretty big influence in Europe. Religion is a huge factor, and so it's alternate history, which I already love, and it's this conspiracy theory story about basically Gnostic gospels and these dynasties of popes. So like the Merovingians and the Medici and such. I think the one that they bring up
and
is
it's kind
Medici.
of a mystery story.
Yeah, when I often describe it to people, I'll describe it as kind of like what if the Da Vinci Code was good and set in an alternate history, because there's also, unlike the Da Vinci Code, there's like actual magic and like supernatural stuff is going on. So there's this very like divided element of religious fervor and also just like really blatant supernatural sacrificial stuff going on. It's very cool. It reminds me kind of in a way of the way that they're doing at least the first new Sherlock Holmes with Robert Downey Jr., how there's kind of like that supernatural element involved, but also like very politically based. Europe is on the brink of war in 1933. In this case, it's not necessarily a war with what is the Prussian Empire in this book, but is a war for the Holy Land. So France wants to retake the Holy Land, for Christianity, essentially.
So like a 5th crusade?
Yeah, well, there were 6 crusades. But
I thought there were 4.
There are a lot.
There were
children's crusades.
Depending what country you're in.
So crusade N+1. N is the number of crusades that have happened.
Yeah, I think most historians count 6, but I could be mistaken.
Most historians count a lot of things.
Yeah. So
we like the general case.
Basically, another crusade, which would put them at war with the Ottoman Empire, which controls the Holy Land, and so there's a very like heavy political influence. You get to kind of see like the other side making political maneuvers and kind of some behind the scenes stuff, but it mostly focuses around a doctor whose friend is a priest and admits to him that something's been stolen from, like a scroll has been stolen from the archives that he's supposed to be, protecting, essentially, these secret archives. And so some crazy shit starts happening because of it, and while the doctor's investigating, basically everybody's in the church and in the Inquisition is out to get him. So it's really good, kind of like mystery, sort of detective story, but not really.
It's
he's a
the
doctor.
Da Vinci Code, but
yeah,
it's like
exactly. Yeah, so that's how I like to describe it. If the Da Vinci Code was good, it's an indie book. It was originally published by Image. It's now published by Dark Horse. So the art sort of suffers at times. Just like you get some odd elongated faces and hands and things because the art feels a little bit unrefined, but it's still really good. I really like the art in this. The design is really good, and each character is like pretty easy to tell apart, which is a problem I think in a lot of indie books. Is you're like, with not as good art is like, who's that guy again? Is that this guy?
Wasn't that guy the guy who was just talking?
Yeah, and so it's kind of confusing. In this one, everybody has like a really distinct element, and the coloring I think is actually fantastic in this book, which brings a lot to it, which adds a lot to the art. I mean, if it were bad coloring, it would really be hurting. But yeah, it's really good, you know. And I love the supernatural type stuff. I'm a big Constantine fan, so this is kind of, you know, not quite in that vein because he's not supernatural in any way. He's just a doctor, but he's very smart. You know, he graduated first in his class, and you know, is just like this brainy guy that they're all trying to kill now.
Nice.
And that's good. I like it.
I'm all about trying to kill the brainy guy.
Yeah. So check out check out Rex Mundi. It's written by Arvid Nelson. And it has some different artists. Eric J. and Jeremy Cox do the first 14. So I'm not sure how many we'll read. We'll figure that out afterwards. But
Yeah.
What do you got, Joseph?
I brought Asterios Polyp, which is David Mazzucchelli's first solo work. David Mazzucchelli of Frank Miller fame.
Yeah.
No, it's not. David Mazzucchelli worked with Frank Miller on Daredevil for Marvel, on what I consider to be Frank Miller's best work and probably some of the best Daredevil. Well, I mean, it's still being aped today, so...
also on Year One.
Year One,
well.
which is his superior Batman story. Yeah. Yes, that's my unpopular opinion.
I agree with that.
It's very popular with me.
Yeah, I mean, it's the right one, right? Like, Year One is better than Dark Knight Returns. I appreciate what Dark Knight Returns does, but Year One is better.
And it does more for, like, what comics were trying to do at the time. So
Absolutely.
I feel like it also has lasting effects where Dark Knight Returns doesn't.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, and I feel like Mazzucchelli was this calming influence, and you see it in Daredevil too. There's a restraint in Daredevil, and there's a restraint in Year One that is not there with Dark Knight Returns.
And I love Lynn Varley's art in Dark Knight Returns, but Mazzucchelli's art in Year One is outstanding. It's so good.
His stuff in Daredevil too is excellent, and it's beautiful stuff. And Asterios Polyp is no different.
Very different art style for him. I feel like it's very simplified, like really clean lines.
Super clean lines, really excellent use of a color palette.
Mm-hmm. It's a really limited color palette.
Yeah, it's incredibly limited, but the story does not suffer for it.
It uses it very well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it really
actually,
does.
I just read this.
Yeah.
The whole thing about it is that the color palette is a part of the story.
Yeah.
The story, nothing is unintentional in the story.
Right.
Everything in the art is very, very intentionally done. And just the way that things are drawn, the colors that are used, these are all intentionally placed to tell a part of the story.
Yeah,
it's kind of a master class in comics writing.
I really think it is.
You see how the word balloons are used, how their text is written, how their text will change from like a blue color to a pink color to denotate a change in tone, and also just like direction of conversation. Like
the way that things will change from sharp lines to curvy lines, and that'll indicate like the change in power dynamic and a conversation that's happening.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's really, really phenomenal stuff.
I think it's we were talking before about Wormwood and about how when you have a single creator, you're getting the essence of that creator's vision, and I think Asterios Polyp defines that. That is what you are getting. Everything you see is everything David Mazzucchelli wants you to see, down to the book itself.
Yeah.
The binding on the book itself is... in the dust jacket. It's really well done. It's not a complex story, although there is complexity in it. There's a lot that you could get. The characters are very deep and well written. And it's just I picked it up not really knowing what to expect, and when I put it down like later that day because I could not put it down, I was pleased. I really think it's an excellent. It's an excellent example of what can be done in the medium of comics. So, and I had let Toby borrow it. And
I borrowed it yesterday, and I finished it this morning.
Yeah. So, and I thought, well, I have it with me, and it's great, and I want people to read it, even if we don't choose it. So I'll talk about it.
It's definitely good.
Well, if we don't choose it, if I hadn't just read it, I would want to read it right now.
Right. Well, of course, I recommended it. We have an interesting situation. I was thinking about this today. We have an interesting situation because there's an odd number of people here, so there would be no chance of a tie unless.
Not that that's ever happened.
Well, not that that's ever happened because nobody ever votes for the book.
We could still tie because if like 2 of us pick one book and the other 2 of us pick a different book, and then the 5th member picks a third offshoot.
That's true.
Book,
I guess we could tie.
We can still tie, and I'm surprised that you didn't think about it because you are a mathematician. You should have known that.
See, because I thought,
however, am not.
Because in game theory, to crib from numbers, which I hate. In game theory, you wouldn't do that.
Are we talking about math again?
No, we're not. We're not.
So, did you have a recommendation, Cade?
I didn't come prepared with one. However, after reading after seeing Temple Smith's high school work, comparing it to Wormwood, I would kind of like to read 30 Days of Night to compare that as well.
It's a great Steve Niles story. If you're a Steve Niles fan at all, I think like that's some of his best writing.
I love the Cal McDonald mysteries. I think they're
those are great.
They're campy in all the right ways, and they're a lot of fun. And
didn't they make a terrible movie based on this story? 30 Days of Night?
Oh,
yeah, they did.
Night,
they did. Yes.
I don't think the movie was terrible.
Well, I don't know. I won't speak to it being terrible or not. I know they made the movie.
I have no memory of it other than seeing that it existed and then nobody talking about it. So I just assumed that it was maybe not so good.
I have a copy of it if you want to see it. It's visually very striking. There were some really fascinating choices made to represent how the comics laid out because, as we were discussing before, 30 Days of Night is kind of an abstract-looking story. Yeah. You know, some of the casting you're kind of like, really? But it doesn't feel, by the time you're done, I certainly don't feel deprived. It does stand out for me as one of the movies that literally terrifies my wife. So it's always going to stick in my mind, I guess, in that weird way. So I just can't.
Yeah, I don't.
I suppose that's fair.
I just feel like I don't like the dark really that much. I prefer it to be light out because I like to see things, and the whole idea of I have a good friend that's actually an actual honest to God Eskimo, and she grew up in one of the Alaskan islands, and they would have night for a month at a time, and I'm like, no dice, no thank you.
Can't read comic books in the dark.
Yeah, it's like exactly right. It's like
pretty
no
sure
dice.
They had lights, but
but no sunlight for even for a week, even for a day.
We
I'm
get
like,
that
no,
in Olympia though.
We do, but it's different, and I'm not into the whole like. Oh, let's throw vampires into that. I'm like, no, let's not. We cannot do that too. It'd be great.
I thought the movie was all right. I think what happened was it just like wasn't what people were expecting, like mainstream population were expecting.
Well, that's very true, and actually that's exactly what I was about to say. Is that it's not mainstream vampires.
Yeah.
It's a very different vision of vampires. It's a very, especially now, right?
Yeah.
They don't sparkle when the sunlight hits them, and they don't. They're not very nice people, and they don't want to make love to you. They want to eat you like ravenous beasts.
Well, they do want to make love to you, but in a much more visceral and culinary way.
It's much more, monstrous. They are monsters, Yeah. It's the movie monster style vampire rather than the like.
Well, I feel like it's even more aggressive than that. I feel like it's almost like these are vampire creatures that almost are not monsters. They're beasts.
Yeah.
Like I can't quite clearly remember in the comic how fast this kind of shows up, but like it becomes very obvious that like they have a kind of a pack mentality.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bestial things, and given the way that we think about vampires right now is these suave, sophisticated, I will make love to you, I am Tom Cruise or Brad Pitt, or I'm Pattinson and I sparkle. To have vampires show up and be like, wow, I'm gonna run, oh my god. Yeah. You're like a ravenous group of horrible creatures.
You're gonna rip my arm off and drink my blood out of my artery. That's lovely. No.
Yeah, I thought the movie was fine. It's just like so different than anything people had seen. Like maybe too different for like your classic like vampire horror movie.
Well, I think there's this question: it's like who do you market that movie to?
Yeah,
you're gonna try and market it towards the hardcore horror fans, but that's not.
Yeah, it's
who the movie is for. It's the same. Scott Pilgrim, I think, had the same problem. It's like they had no idea how to market it,
right?
And so it suffered because of it.
Yeah.
Thanks for playing that out.
Yep.
So what I brought this week is Jeff Smith's Shazam, The Monster Society of Evil. This is the first thing that he worked on after finishing Bone.
Yep.
I believe it was printed as one thing initially, although it might have been a few single issues at one point.
It was definitely single issues.
Yeah, I feel like it was single issues.
Yeah.
I guess it was. But it's written and drawn by Jeff Smith, and it's him kind of retelling the origin of Captain Marvel, the DC Captain Marvel.
Almost exactly a retelling.
Well, the first issue is almost exactly a retelling of the original story. And then this issues 2 through 4 are a retelling of the Monster Society of Evil storyline, but that is kind of completely retooled. Some of the characters are recast or appear in different ways than they originally did. And I quite frankly think it's one of the best superhero comics that's been written in years. It's very kid-friendly in a way that modern comics really aren't.
Yeah.
It's very true to the original Captain Marvel. The art is incredibly good. The colors are really great.
Oh yeah, it's the same colorist that went back and recolored all of Bone. So if you've seen the colored Bone, it's the same colorist whose name escapes me, but is fantastic.
It's good art with the caveat that you like child-oriented art.
Well,
it is a little cartoon.
I mean, if you like the cartoon, Jeff Smith is a very cartoony artist, but I don't think his work suffers because of it. But I think that is it is an important.
If you like Jeff Smith's art, I think you'll like the art in this.
Right. No, I think it's a safe assumption.
Yeah.
To make. It's just sometimes.
Steve Hamarker is the colorist.
Yeah,
he does do an excellent job.
Is awesome. I've watched a couple of tutorials like on YouTube of him coloring, and it's just like really fascinating to see how he works. Like it's really, really talented.
This book makes me sad, actually.
Why does it make you
sad? It
sad?
makes me sad because, if I recall correctly, a lot of the buzz around it at the time was, Jeff Smith was a huge Shazam fan. The character had been kind of maligned and mistreated for a long time, and it was kind of DC's to go like, okay, sure, you're an incredibly popular, prolific person. Let's give it to you and have a chance of rejuvenating this character that has some really interesting story beats kind of mixed into its mythos that have been watered down or not really approached in a long time. And if I recall, the book had shipping issues and it came out in pieces in a weird way. Like I think like every bad thing that happens to a comic book happened to this story. Like I think he got sick. I mean, I can't remember exactly. It's been a long time, but it just seems to me that it was like there was kind of if Shazam's ever going to be relevant again, hopefully Jeff Smith will get us there. And none of that happened. And not only did none of that happen, but then they turned around and started doing a lot of other weird things with the mythos.
Was that the Trials of Shazam era?
Yeah, no, it was after that. But I mean, like 52 had happened,
right?
And Black Adam, and.
Yeah, no, that was the Trials of Shazam, where they were trying to take Freddie Freeman and turn him into the new Captain Marvel.
I think it was like right before that, I think.
Right.
Yeah, this came out because this came out in 2007, and that all happened in like 2007, 2008.
Right, I think you're right. So yeah, so it was just kind of one of these things. It was like let's show people the pure joy of old-fashioned Shazam. Let's forget about all that and do this other stuff.
I can see how that would make you sad because this is so incredibly good.
They did another series, like another all ages series about Shazam that may still be ongoing.
I have not heard about that. I would be interested in that.
Yeah, but they did definitely, like, someone else came and picked up Shazam, and it's really good. Because I know that Mike Norton eventually took over the art on that, who's awesome, great DC artist, Mike Norton.
Captain Marvel has really never worked very well in the context of the greater DC universe.
Yeah, and it was an all ages book, so it was outside of continuity, so I got to avoid a lot of that, but the art originally started even more kid-friendly than this, like, very stripped down, in a way that I really liked.
Right.
But I think that it kind of put a lot of people off, possibly.
Right. That's kind of the benefit of Jeff Smith, is that while he's all ages friendly, he's all ages friendly in the way that, say, a Pixar movie is.
Right.
Like, if you're, as an adult, there's a lot to enjoy here. I mean, it's just kind of cheery and fun without any qualms about it. And it doesn't try and be mature or gritty or serious. It's just, he's a superhero and he beats up monsters. And he has a lot of fun doing it. And it's not dumb in the way that kids' things can be dumb.
Yeah, it doesn't talk down to the audience at all.
Right, it's just fun.
It's not dumbed down. Shazam, it's not Freddie Freeman, it's Billy Batson.
Yeah, Billy Batson.
Billy Batson is a really interesting character just to begin with, because he's this kid that can, upon saying Shazam, become an adult. And so, like, that idea in and of itself is, like, weird, but not in any way like really shied away from in this book. You know, it's just it's never dumbed down or simplified for kids. It's just like, hey, this is this cool thing that happens, and you know, you're gonna roll with this weird magical world that everybody lives in.
Well, he's an idea from an era where he was able to be used in a way that was cool, and now it's kind of like we don't have any use for him because he's not gritty. He's not. He doesn't have veins in his teeth.
40-year-old.
Yeah, right. And so this is a great example of what is wrong with comic books, right? Is that you have Shazam just sitting there, and you could be doing this really great thing with him. You could be getting new people into it, right? You could be setting up your new fan base, but you're not. You're doing stupid shit like Black Adam and the stupid thing that had like his whole storyline in 52 is just fucking awful. It's the worst part of 52.
The storyline in 52
actually, this is where the whistles come out and the cards get thrown.
Flag on the play. Overstating.
See, actually, so my main, I'm gonna throw two contentions that are parallel, and maybe Chard will agree or not. But
I won't. I don't know what you're gonna say.
So A, you're right. Shazam was designed at a time where things were set, baseball, apple pie,
mom, baseball,
and depending on how far
syphilis,
and depending on how far you want to get into this, where the tenuous connection between mythology and the modern superhero was much stronger as far as being able to trace its overt influences, right? I mean, he has the speed of Mercury.
Mercury. It's like Solomon, Hercules,
the wisdom of
Achilles,
Solomon, strength of Hercules,
Zeus,
blah blah blah.
Mercury's the last one. Apollo and Mercury.
Right. So I mean, so there's
kind of mixing Roman and Greek pretty freely there.
Oh yeah, it's America.
Yeah.
Well, they just the names just to be able to spell Shazam. Right. They're the same character,
basically. So you have that inherent, you have that simplicity, and so I think you're right. This is a character. There are many characters that have the potential to be a very easy portal for all ages access to comics.
Yeah,
and I think Shazam's a really good one because it's a kid who turns into an adult. Like those are some really compelling hooks to sink into a bunch of young readers.
Yeah.
On the flip side of it, though, don't confuse poor execution with bad idea. Because Captain Marvel I think there's been a fair amount of body of work before the damn New 52 that actually carved a niche for the Shazam mythology and the magic portion of the universe, where it was very clear. Some of the best stories involving Shazam and Superman illustrate this very fascinating parallel between the origin of might, how it's manifested, and who has responsibility for it. And quite frankly, Kingdom Come by itself justifies Shazam's existence as a great superhero.
I was going to say Kingdom Come. That's a great example.
So I think the character I think every comic book character that is currently on the market outside of a couple like the Punisher, in mainstream comics, has the potential to kind of go either way, and so it's about execution. But I mean, like Andrew was saying, right? Like I actually liked the Black Adam stuff. Yeah, that actually was an elevation for that character. He became complex. He especially if you tie it to the context of the Justice Society of America stuff, before and after,
and the Black Adam miniseries that came out right after 52, which I really liked.
It was Countdown and then World War III. At the end of Countdown, that was really kind of flat and cardboard and it was very two-dimensional.
Yeah, it felt like a weird kind of pulling.
Where in 52 they had put a lot of effort into making Black Adam a three-dimensional character.
Black Mary stuff, that was all. Mary Margaret, that was Countdown. That was not 52. All right, then I misspoke. So 52 is where they give Black Adam the family.
Yeah, that's where Isis shows up and Osiris.
Okay.
And actually,
that was
the Isis storyline in Countdown is maybe one of the only parts I like about Countdown. It's like the elongated man story and the Isis story, and then like other than that book is
I gave up on it after about 10 issues.
Yeah, I read it all.
I just couldn't.
I am so sorry. That you
52 seemed I read all of. I read all Blackest Night. So
are we going to trade?
We're not going to do it. I'm not going to shoehorn my favorite whipping boy in there.
I definitely feel like we don't need to go there.
We could go there for a while.
So why doesn't Brant recommend his comic?
Recommend away.
I'm going to spare... I've been watching a lot of Once Upon a Time from ABC, so I'm going to spare Tobiah my initial recommendation, which was going to be Fables.
I actually think the first volume of Fables is really
But
I actually hated the first volume of Fables.
Well, I'm sparing us all that
Okay.
choice because instead, actually, I just decided to pick back up a book that I've read like 4 or 5 times since I found it. I'll make no bones that I am an unabashed Mark Waid fan, but Empire by Mark Waid
Yes!
is my recommendation, which basically is what if Doctor Doom won and kind of had like one like small group of people left to destroy. Like, could he trust the people around him? What would the world be like for the world's premier supervillain if he actually just kind of annihilated everything that stood in his way? And Mark Waid and I believe the artist is Barry Kitson, if I recall correctly.
That sounds right.
Yeah, it's just really interesting because it opens up and you're just kind of like, oh, it's Doctor Doom, but it's not Doctor Doom. It's the guy named Golgoth, and you're like, oh. All right, but it very, it focuses mostly on his family, his interpersonal relationships, and all the weird meandering backstabbing that's happening behind him, and it just kind of charts a very interesting course that I found really refreshing, especially from its era. I mean, I think this was actually written before Kingdom Come, or maybe right after.
I don't know this book at all.
No,
it was originally published through a imprint for DC Comics called Gorilla Press, which I think was their version of what Icon for Marvel back in the 90s. So it kind of was out of nowhere. It's reprinted now under the DC label, though, but it's its own universe. It has no attachment to anything else. Yeah. But it's a really interesting read, and especially it has, because it came from that era where everybody was kind of overpowered, juiced up steroid anti-heroes in the 90s. It also serves as a very fascinating critique about like how basically all those people would lose when confronted by a villain who has half a brain and you're all idiots and I'm going to kill you all.
And Doom is a great villain for that because he's always been, if Reed didn't exist in the Marvel universe, is there anyone smart enough to stop Doom?
See, that sounds like something that Mark Millar would write. Only
fuck it all up to hell and back.
He would ruin it. I believe that Mark Waid could actually pull that off. So now I'm really interested.
One day, it was probably close to 5 years ago now, I was asking Brant for recommendations for comic books, and I was just getting back into it after about a 10, 12-year hiatus because of my collection had been stolen, and it broke my heart for years. And he handed me Empire, and I said, oh, what's this all about? And he goes, what if Doctor Doom won? And I read it, and I loved it, and I loved every fucking second of it, and between that and Kingdom Come, that is what sold me on Mark Waid, and he's still one of my favorites. The man, I think he always gets it right. He gets it right more than I think most people do, especially when it comes to superheroes. He writes superheroes like they're superheroes, not like they are... he doesn't do the Mark Millar, Garth Ennis thing where superheroes are dicks and deserve to be put through their paces until they're totally ruined. Or the Bendis, I love Frank Miller, which is fine. It's it's okay. Brubaker did it too with Daredevil, and it's like, let's beat the crap out of him. But it's like, hey, no.
I feel very strongly about this.
I do, because, and it's because, and I say this all the time, right? Like Mark Waid's run on Daredevil in the first episode. He sums up how I feel about superhero comics in general, where he turns to Foggy at the end and he goes, I've been in a dark place lately, Foggy, and I'm not going to do that anymore.
Mark Waid does in the first issue of Daredevil what Jeff Johns tried to do in the first issue of Aquaman, and
he does it successfully.
Jeff Johns was incredibly ham-handed about it, and it came off very poorly in my opinion, and Mark Waid did an amazing job, and it came off perfectly.
But Jeff Johns is burdened by the crown of DC's.
We're not gonna get into that.
If Marvel's Jeff Johns is Bendis, then how is Bendis able to do it with the new Moon Knight, with that series on Moon Knight, which was awesome and everyone should read.
I think Bendis and Jeff Johns both have a very similar thing, where if you give them one thing to do, they can do it well. If you give them 8 things to do,
I disagree. I think that a lot of the events that came out of Bendis' run on the Avengers and all the things that, if you read the editorial commentary from everything that happened since Avengers Disassembled, most of that was Brian Michael Bendis operating in the way that Jeff Johns has been officially deemed to operate for the DC Universe, right? As a showrunner for the entire universe and help pointing its direction, at least for that very large chunk of people.
Right.
And that's what Marvel now is about, is basically the age of Bendis is done.
Yeah.
If you go back and look at the way, I have this argument with Tobiah all the time, the editorial narrative cohesion is so much stronger in Marvel across its events. And, I mean, to the point where it's like, wow, you're actually referencing events in the appropriate order, time.
Well, that's definitely true now.
Well, yeah, and I will give it
that's true 5 years ago.
I'm telling you, go back and read that stuff. Read Avengers Disassembled. Read the new Avengers series that came after it. Read that stuff. Now that you've read everything that came after it, and you can see, like, very overt seeds being planted. Like, for now, you're just like, I know who that is. I know where that's going. I know what's going on. Now, of course, they changed things, stuff didn't, I mean, Miller himself said, the Civil War didn't get executed, with the triple point flip at the end of the way they wanted it to because of, editorial stuff. I think that's part of the business of monthly comics. But I think at the end of the day, Bendis has proven that, yes, he's a very competent writer. If you can give him a single task, he can do marvelously on a book, but that does not necessarily diminish his ability to steer multiple efforts. Now, maybe he shouldn't be the writer on all of them.
That's the point I'm making.
But I don't know that he's done that to the same mistake that I think that Jeff Johns.
Well, no, and I don't think he has either.
Jeff Johns is the great Satan of mainstream comics. We're all willing to say that.
Yeah, no, he totally is. And I just wanted to be known. I did not drag him into it this time, but I do believe that makes my
no. You really did.
I did. Maybe I did. Maybe it was all a plan.
If you didn't say it, your very presence just laid the seed.
I think I'm like 8 for 9 now on Jeff Johns references in this podcast. So
I was editing some old episodes today. You talk about him a lot.
I do. He's my whipping boy. He's there's got to be somebody in the '90s. It was Liefeld. And now it's Jeff Johns.
And I think that the Green Lantern series is.
Oh, well, yeah.
I like Rebirth. I think it's great. Revenge of the Green Lanterns.
Yeah, I mean, his entire run on the
JSA.
Flash.
I hated his run on the Flash.
JSA with his original run on the Flash.
The one where he came in after Mark Waid and he has Hunter blah 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 turned into Zoom, and it's a year-long arc and it ends exactly where it starts, and I thought it was awful.
You mean where he completely redefines the Flash's rogues gallery as a credible threat for the entire DC universe? Yeah,
awful.
You're right.
I'm sorry, Brant. I read it all and I hated it. I hated it all. I didn't think he did not retool them and make them credible. He made them awful people, which has never been what the Flash was about.
They're villains.
They are villains, yes, but they're not fucking Arkham inmates.
Well,
like there's a difference.
But I think that was the point, though.
Like to me, it didn't.
And that was like how. And I think that was the whole point, though. To a certain extent, it was you have somebody like the Flash, and literally the guys who are going to challenge him. I throw a boomerang.
Yeah.
I shoot a cold gun. Unless they've got something about them that makes them special, they're not a challenge.
But the thing is that it wasn't Wally West's challenge. I mean, the thing was at that point, I didn't find them compelling. I found Jeff Johns trying to do what everybody else was trying to do, which was to turn comic books into this darker, grittier place, which they had already tried and didn't work for me then.
See, so I got 2 things I got to say about this. First of all, you read it after a decade of sustaining Jeff Johns' hate, as opposed to reading it when it came out, right?
No, that's not true. I read it only a few years after sustaining Jeff Johns' hate, but I read it with... And this is the thing, I give him the benefit of the doubt. I read the whole run. I didn't skip any of the issues, and I think there was some interesting stuff there too. I think what it was for me was that I just felt like he was pressing too hard. I feel like he could have pulled back a little bit, and he could have pulled off something great there.
But I guess what I want to say about that is, I think sometimes it's hard. I think it's hard, especially in the monthly book type thing, unless you're reading the line at the time it's published. To know how, I mean, for all we know, Dan DiDio, whoever else was providing senior editorial at that time, was writing them all, was basically making them come to work dressed up in GIMP costumes and whipping them every day saying, I want it darker.
Entirely possible.
And he's a guy who needs a paycheck, right? I mean, especially at that point in his career when he was younger and didn't have the ability to make decisions.
And I'll...
So, like, that's my challenge with some of those kinds of statements is, whether you like it or not, many of these runs, many of these artists' impressions on the... I mean, it's easy to go back and read Frank Miller stuff and be like, this is a brilliant play to make this all way more dark than it needs to be, but I don't think that was his intention.
No, absolutely not.
Way.
And that's not my. That's not my
part of the like part of the culture. It's part of the thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's ultimately why comic fans get so weirdly attached to things from their past, because it's like he's like being
because things were better then.
I was there, man. You didn't see the shelves falling. Jeff Johns was the only light that kept us on.
I'll provide you with a further disclaimer that I read the modern age Flash from William Mesner Loeb's through Mark Waid's run, which was fucking epic, and then Mark Waid stepped down and Jeff Johns started writing, and the comparison between the two, they wrote in completely different ways, and that definitely colored the way I felt about it.
Yeah,
but it's still to me, like, I understand what Frank Miller was doing in Dark Knight Returns, and I understand why it needed to be done. I think it's great. I love Dark Knight Returns. I think that, yes, it's misogynistic. It's fucking, it's awful Frank Miller insanity unbound, but that's what was needed at the time. Like, I like Year One because I think it's a tighter story, and I think it conveys more of a Batman that I can, not relate to, but that I can get behind and understand.
Well, they're different points, it's like one's a Batman you're supposed to like.
Well, it's the beginning and the end, right?
And one's a Batman where you're supposed to be like, why the fuck did we need that guy?
Yeah,
that was why did we trust that guy? He's got a 12-year-old girl running around.
Yeah,
like, what is happening?
Exactly. So, like, and it's like I said, I really like Jeff Johns. I like fucking Rebirth. I thought that was great. It gives me goosebumps. I read it now and I get goosebumps. I think there's some great shit that I can go through Blackest Night and go, this was amazing. The scene where Jesse Quick is running with her dad and she outruns him. That was an amazing moment. But there was but that's the thing. It's like, here's your ice cream. It's like, it's not the shit sandwich that sucks. It's the fact that underneath the shit sandwich is the good stuff, right? Yeah. And every once in a while, you see it through the shit that you have to wade through. That's what my biggest problem is.
I think that he does some things really well. I think that the new Flash series is fine. I think that it's a good. Well,
if you like Barry Allen,
even if you said
it's Venom dripping.
It's better. It's better if you don't know either of the characters. To be honest,
I think
it's better if you did not grow up with Barry Allen, and it's better if you did not grow up with Wally Wade, because it is neither of those characters. It is not Silver Age Barry Allen. Because Silver Age Barry Allen does not work in modern comics. Like, he was Silver Age. He never had a modern comic until now.
Yeah.
This is not Barry Allen. We could have renamed him. We could have had a new Flash.
Which is, I think, would have been interesting.
What happened? I mean, they're just like, Wally, we're done with that guy. We need a new guy. Which is fine, because every few years you have to do that at DC, just because your readership turns around. I think that's just how the game goes.
I agree with you completely.
I don't know that you need to name them a different character, but, like, it would have been nice to have a scene where Wally passes on the mantle to some new kid, and the new kid takes over the new Flash series, but I feel like we've done that.
Some new kid that's not Bart Allen.
It's not Bart Allen or not Barry Allen. Like, we've done that kind of stuff before, and I really liked Bart Allen as a Flash. I thought that Flash miniseries was fine, but or that 13 issues they got canceled.
That Flash series that suddenly became a miniseries posthumously,
right? But I think there are things that, like, Johns really, like, loses track of, and it's hard because you can tell he loves them so much that they just fall flat. Like, I think Blackest Night is the one that everyone loves to hate, but for me, it's Flashpoint, which is the relaunch of the Flash. Barry Allen is the Flash, right?
Right, along with basically leaving it.
Didn't they do the Return of Barry Allen and then they did Flashpoint?
Yeah,
right. It was something, because Barry Allen comes back in Blackest Night,
right? No,
and that's kind of the thing. Is he totally does. Yeah.
He's got the blue ring. I mean,
he becomes the Avatar of Hope.
Yeah.
He's there in panel 1 of Blackest Night. I think he comes back in...
he may be...
maybe he was already back.
Right before Blackest
Night. Yeah, he comes back in something previous. Isn't it?
I thought he came back in The Return of Barry Allen. I thought that was a miniseries that they did. But maybe I'm wrong about it.
I don't know.
Grant Morrison miniseries or event, right?
Final Crisis.
Didn't he come back in Final Crisis? I think that none of us know what we're talking about.
I don't like to talk about that.
I think we're something like an hour 10 at this point.
We're an hour 7.
Okay.
So we need to vote. We need to vote. So Rex Mundi.
Is that your vote?
No, I need to. I can't. I have to think because, like, I can't vote for my own.
Chard, why don't you vote first?
I'll vote first. I vote for Mike Wade's Empire.
Okay,
I'm gonna vote for Shazam and the Monster Society of Evil, just because.
making it hard for me.
Empire was the only one I haven't read, so I had to pick that one.
I gotcha.
Cade, how do you feel?
Can I go last? I'm still trying to decide between.
Last is the worst. You don't want to go last. Then you actually decide.
See, now I'm torn because I brought Shazam, but I really want to talk. I want to read Empire now.
I do too.
Well, you can't vote for your own book.
Well, sure.
Since when is that a rule?
I don't know.
Can we not? I thought we used to say that we could.
Okay, well now I am voting for my own book just to spite you.
I thought that was.
I don't know.
You were the one that listened to all the podcasts today.
I created the show. I should know the rules, but I don't. I forgot. I don't think that was a rule ever.
Well, I'm voting for my own book then. I'm going to vote for Asterios.
All right.
Screw you guys.
Maybe it was a rule. Maybe that's why we did it.
I think it was a rule because then everybody picks their own book and we're all like...
Okay, yeah. So your initial vote is for your own book because you brought it.
Okay, then if I can't vote for my own book, I will also vote for Empire.
Right. Joe, what do you got?
I'm going to vote for Shazam.
Oh,
okay, Shazam. All right, okay. Brant?
Well, since I can't vote for my own, I'd actually love to read Rex Mundi.
That's great.
Cade.
This is the position
I can't decide between Rex Mundi and Empire. They both sound amazing and suited to my tastes, but I'm gonna go with Empire because I really do like Mark Waid.
Also, we would have had that tie.
We would have. I would have changed. I was getting ready to change my. I was getting ready to. I was going to be like, if it makes it easier I'll just choose Empire because I'm going to borrow Shazam when we leave here anyways.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask to borrow it.
I think we can hook you up with that.
Yeah, I'm going to pick it up just to read
it
anyways. So.
It's good. I like that.
I'm sure that
you can borrow it.
Everybody can read Shazam.
It's good. I really like it. I think you guys should read it. Obviously,
but we should all read Empire.
Listeners playing along at home. You should always, like normal, read all the books we suggest.
You should. You really should.
For next month, we're doing Mark Waid's Empire. And is it just one trade? Or
yeah, it's one trade. I mean, it's like self-contained.
Awesome.
And it's excellent. I think you're going to read it and love it. We're all going to love it. It's going to be great.
All right, we'll do that.
And now everyone's going to hate it.
I feel good. I feel good.
Yeah, why did music. Yeah. Cue the music. Go. Bye.